That's a great question. The difference between a class and an object, and to be honest, it's one of the ones that our professors, instructors actually warned us would probably be asked as part of these interview questions. But I kind of want to talk about kind of how I learned the various pieces of it because it wasn't one of the more easy concepts. Coming from somebody who wants to be a programmer, the whole idea of objects and classes was a little bit foreign, so it took a little practice. Obviously, our instructors did a great job giving us real world examples that we could practice on in class and projects we could work on. I probably spent more time than I care to admit on YouTube watching the various aspects of classes and objects. Found sites like Tutorials Points where they kind of walk through the examples of it, and saw a lot of similarities between what they were talking about. But until I got to the point where I could actually put it into some frame of reference that I understood, it didn't fully make sense. But I'm going to give first of all, I'm going to give you the textbook definition of what you probably hear from all the students that are going through here and actually interviewing is a class is made up of attributes and variables and behaviors and methods. So the attributes and variables kind of define what the class is going to hold, and the attributes are what the class can do. But by itself, a class is more just a blueprint or a framework. It's until you use the new keyword and you make an instance of that class that you have an object, and you can have multiple objects of that class. So for example, I'm going to go back to kind of my childhood. We had a house, and I think a lot of people had houses or places that they grew up with. So a class would be the blueprint for that house. It would be the drawing. It wouldn't necessarily be a physical object that you could walk into, but it might define things that says these classes or these objects, when we actually make them, are going to have things like an address or a color or the square footage. And you might be able to do things with that particular house, such as add an addition, which is change the size, paint the house, which allows you to change the color. But those are just kind of like a definition. So then if we take it to the next step and we do new house and we make it my house. So growing up, my address was 612 Larry Lane, Green Bay, Wisconsin. And our house was green, and we had a small house, 1,200 square feet. But then my friends had a house too. So using the same class, they made another object, so another new house, and their address, and I have no idea why I remember this, is 3525 Humboldt Drive in Green Bay. Their house was always white, and it was 3,000 square feet. So obviously we had a 1,200, they had a 3,000 square foot house. But we at some point we had to change the color of our house. So after about 10 years, our house went from green to blue. So we would need some kind of method or behavior that would allow us to change that color from green to blue. Whereas my friend's house, they never changed it, so that method would still be there. It just was never implemented or never used. So that's kind of a difference. So the class would be the house concept, more of an idea, but not actually a physical representation. And then I make as many objects of those house classes that I wanted to. And I'm guessing there's probably millions of houses in the U.S. So we'd have a million objects of that one class called house. And until I got my fingers on a keyboard and actually had a chance to code this, it was in my mind. It was just starting to kind of in the back of my mind going, okay, I think I understand this. But early on, one of the first classes we had, which was our CST 135 class, we actually built an Uno game. And we had a class for our main. It just had a method to public static void main, the thing where everything from Java starts off from. We had a class for game where we had an array list of a hand that's made up of card objects. So we had a class called cards, one class called cards, but we made 108 objects of that particular class. The attributes for cards were color and value for the Uno. So we had the different colors we could have and the different values. But so one class called cards and 108 objects of that class went into the hand for our class for our game. So that kind of brought it all into focus and what made sense. And obviously we had it a bunch more times. We had to build objects out of our contacts class because we had multiple contacts that were getting added to a project. And when we were doing stuff later on, and a lot of people say that objects and classes have to be, or objects are physical things you can hold, like a pen or a car or something like that. But there are service-based classes that you can have, like when you connection to a database. There's not a physical thing that I can hold, but it still has the attributes and the methods that are associated with it. So that's still in the back of my mind. I don't fully grasp that part. So I have things I have to practice. I know that this I'm early on in this journey to become a programmer, but I'm ready to step in and do whatever it takes. I'm going to keep practicing. I'm going to get better at these kind of things, and hopefully I can do it working for you. And so, I had a tough time grasping the difference between a class and an object, but I'm getting better. So, when you were learning how to program, what were the challenges, or what kind of areas did you find more difficult to understand?